For my next projection, I'm going to do the PA projection of the mandibular body. For this projection, I want a 10 by 12 lengthwise IR. I want my patient to be in the prone or upright position facing the bucky. I want my MSP of the patient's head centered to the midline of the grid. The head resting on the nose and chin. That way you can have the mandibular symphysis anterior side parallel with the plane of the IR. And then I want my acanthomeatal line to be nearly perpendicular to the IR. So acanthomeatal. About like that. I want my MSP also to be perpendicular to the IR, and I want to center my IR to the level of the patient's lips, right there. And then I want to center my CR to my IR. I want to place my marker. I want to have my CR at a perpendicularly entering at the level of the lips. And my collimation is going to be a 1/2 to 1 inch beyond the lateral sides of the face, above the TMJs, and below the chin. I'm going to instruct my patient to stop breathing, take exposure, and let them know that they can breathe. For my next projection, I'm going to do the Townes method for the mandible. And this is basically just a regular Townes method, but we will instead adjust the collimation some. That way we include all the mandible. We'll have a 10 by 12 lengthwise IR. We're going to center the MSP of the patient's body to the midline of the grid. You're going to have the patient, back of the head on the IR. You want your OML to be perpendicular. And you want to center your IR to the foramen magnum, so about centered there. Your CR, since we lined up the OML, is going to be at a caudal angle of 30 degrees, entering 2.5 inches above the glabella and passing through the level of the EAM. So glabella, we're going to go 2.5 inches above, passing through to the EAM. We're going to place our marker. We're going to collimate in a 1/2 to 1 inch beyond the skin line of the skull. And this time we'll just adjust that so that we're down a little bit so we can include the whole mandible. Instruct my patient to hold their breath, or not hold their breath, stop breathing, take exposure, and let them know that they can breathe. For my next projection, I'm going to do the PA axial projection of the mandibular rami. For this projection, I'm going to have a 10 by 12 lengthwise IR. I'm going to have my patient in the prone position or facing the upright bucky. I want my patient to rest their forehead and nose on the IR. I want my OML to be perpendicular and my MSP to be perpendicular. So OML, MSP. And then I want to center my IR to the acanthion. And my central ray is going to be directed 20 to 25 degrees cephalic. and exiting the acanthion. My collimation is going to be 1/2 to 1 inch on the sides above the TMJ and below the chin. I would place my marker. I'd instruct my patient to stop breathing, take exposure, and let them know that they can breathe. For my next projection, I'm going to do a PA axial mandibular body. For this projection, I'm going to have a 10x12 lengthwise IR. I'm going to have my patient in the prone position or facing the upright bucky. I want my MSP of the head centered to the IR. I want my AML nearly perpendicular. So my acanthomeatal line almost perpendicular. About like that. Sorry. Okay. I want my MSP perpendicular, and I want my central ray to be directed between the TMJs at an angle of 30 degrees cephalic. Place my marker, direct my central ray. And my collimation is going to be 1/2 inch to 1 inch beyond the lateral sides above the TMJ and below the chin. I would instruct my patient to stop breathing, take exposure, and let them know that they can breathe.